Welcome back to the Cinema 4D to Houdini Translator series, where we've already smashed out MoGraph and Deformers. But what about generators? You know, Loft, Lathe, Sweep, where are they hiding? And just like the others, I've gone and found all the Houdini equivalent node and workflows to our favorite Cinema 4D generators. So you don't have to, and you can get back to making some cool stuff. So let's get into it. First up, we have Subdivide and Cloth Surface. Now, it's just a Subdivide node here that I am animating the different levels of depth. And I've just got a grid that is not that much subdivided. Then it goes through. And you can see this is just subdividing the polygons and no smoothing is being applied. And that does happen on a grid. And to change that, we have all these different modes. Look at this. And this is the one that starts smoothing edges that you'd be more familiar with. So all these other modes are probably a bit more similar to what you'd probably see as a cloth surface. But that's not always the case. So if I plug in the box here, this bilinear one, yeah, subdivides it like that. But if we come to any of the other modes, we start getting all that smoothing that we know and love, just with different methodology. And if we chuck in Flippy here as well, you can see that some things start smoothing depending on the different algorithm. Next up, we have Extrude, which I just have a grid here. It's just being extruded upwards. Now, the cool thing about the Extrude, we have a few different variations of this, but we can go individual elements, which will give you all the different polygons being pulled in, and inset, because that's just what's happening. I've got a little bit of an inset where if I put that to 0, it's probably going to be the same. But if I bring that back to connected and move the inset, it's going to inset the whole thing, which is pretty cool. You can also twist. You can have a heap of fun here. And there's a few different things. Right now when I go to the back isn't outputted. You can chuck on the back as needed. Let's remove some of that twist. And then I'm going to pause it. And if we come up to this group thing here and press select, let's just get a whole heap of primitives and then press enter. And we're going to select them, turn off inset, and they're just going to get extruded, which is cool. But if we use individual elements, yeah, we get them all separate, which can work really cool on a thing like a box. Individual elements or connected elements just look like it's gonna go up like that. But if we go 4x4 by 4, we can see how it is extruding. Again, the cool thing here, I just pause this and let's select. And let's see what happens. It's going to extrude all them out in a really chaotic way. There's one big block, but if we go individual elements, they all come out like that. Sometimes you need different things. And then we have Bevel. And when we first open Bevel, it's going to bevel every single damn edge that exists on here. But we don't really want that. So I normally always click ignore flat edges. And then turn that on to some level that we want. If you go over 90, obviously it's only going to bevel things that have got a bigger angle than 90. Which if I do a big inset this way, that's when you're going to get it. But I usually like having that around here, so we don't bevel any of the other things, but we only bevel really nice hard edges. And then we have our divisions, and also the different profiles that we might want. Round is normally where I stick. Here we have Lathe, or Revolve as it's called in cinema. Now, all I've got here is a curve that I drew, transformed it up here, resampled it just to get it a smoother edge, and then just chuck that into a Revolve. And we have a couple different controls here with the start and end angle that we want to revolve that I'm animating right now. As you can see, we're computing UVs as we go. We also have different levels of division. You know, we can bring that down to 6, and there's going to be less divisions. We'll bring this up to like 32 to make it nice and smooth. Next is Loft. This is always a fun one that I love using in cinema. And we have that in Houdini, but it's called Skin. And we have this preserve shape button. That's probably one of the main things that you will use. Turning that off will just interpolate between. So let's have a look at what's being plugged in first. We have these shapes. Let's template them so we're able to see them later. Plug that in the skin. So you can see first shape matching, last shape matching, but third shape it's interpolating kind of like a Bezier instead of going all the way. But if we click preserve shape, it does go all the way. And that's Loft. That can be used to build some interesting symmetrical objects or weird tunnels. Next is another favorite, and that's Boolean. This is a classic operation that you'll use. What I have here is old Flippy and a sphere that I am animating going side to side, throwing that into a Boolean null. And we have a couple different options. First up here is solid. So these are solid operations. This is the first one that you'll get, and probably the most common that you'll use with geometry. And then we have a few different operations here. We have intersect, we have union, which is pretty boring. Subtract, which is another common one that we use. We have seam as well, which is kind of cool. We have a few different options here, but I normally tend to not touch them. But we can create groups and stuff as well. But let's go back to intersect. And then I'm also bringing in a smaller version of that circle that's going up and down. So let's subtract that from our already subtracted mesh. And there we go. And if I plug that in and press enter, we're able to see it. And then if we want to resolve some of those normal artifacts, just chuck a normal node after. Boolean's pretty effective in Houdini, and I encourage you all to use it. The close cousin in Cinema to Boolean is Spline Mask, which is the 2D version of a Boolean, essentially, which in Cinema is exactly that. So we have a circle, and we have a Boolean, and these are now set to surface instead of solid. So that's an important note. And then I've got another simple rectangle here that I've just moved to the side, and then just throwing that, and we get to Boolean it. And then using ends, we're able to remove that polygon in the middle. And there we go, we get a spline mask. Super simple. Obviously have all the different operations that we might want. You never know when you might need any of these. Now another fun and common one obviously is sweep, which I have just been animated here. We have a helix, and I've got a carve node that's just animating the draw on of this helix. Got a simple shape, which is just a square, just changing it into the right position, and then throwing that into a sweep. Obviously, the normals are messed up when it comes to this, so we always throw a normal node after this. But the sweep node's pretty cool. We have a few different functions. We can specifically change the scale of what's happening on here, so it goes real thin at different points, which is really cool. We can also chuck on some rotation, which is a little bit hard to see here. So let's throw in a different shape. Let's throw in a star. Now we're really going to be able to see this twist and roll. Let's do some couple twists. Yeah, look at that. That's cool. But a cool thing you can do here is output different things. So we can output points. This is probably a little bit boring, but rows. There we go. Might be useful. Columns is a cool one because you can already see what's probably happening here. We can create some cool like rope effects. And if we sweep these curves, we get that again. And the cool thing about sweep node is not only can you put your own custom shape in the side, but you can also get some pretty standard ones here. So I've got this like rope, twisted rope looking thing that's animating on. And we can use round tube. And using round tube on this one, it's just automatically giving us that round tube rather than putting a circle in. And we can do a square version of that. Make it 0.5 so we get some squares. And ribbon, that's just a flat version, which is super cool because we can create stuff like this. And then, you guessed it, we can make some go thin at different points, kind of similar to the other one. We can also roll this, which I already have, which you can't really see with a circle, but you can already see there's some cool effects that you can get from multiple sweeps, but the sweep nodes are super powerful. Next, for when you don't want to use extrude and you just want to use thicken, because maybe you have a cloth or something that you are making thick, and this just kind of does that. We can go in both directions, one direction, but thicken does what thicken does. Next up here we have connect, which is fuse in Houdini. So I've just got the box, and I'm just copying and animating them so they nearly touch, or they kind of do touch, and then throwing that into a fuse, and then subdividing after, so we get these like pills that kind of blob together. Using the fuse node, we have this slider, which is the main one. That's just snap distance. So how close do these bits of geometry need to get before they start fusing? And if we have a look at this, you can kind of see just when they get a bit close, they just become one. And this looks cool under the subdivision surface. Now for symmetry object, which is just called mirror in Houdini. And we have two options. We have just mirror standard, which just essentially gives you 2 bits of geometry based on wherever you put your mirror's middle. And then we have mirror clip, which does the exact same thing, but deletes the geometry that goes through the mirror. This is really cool for symmetrical modeling or anything you like doing that, or making some cool, trippy effects, especially when you start applying more of these. Super fun. You can even like go up here. There's some fun things you can do. And here we have atom array. That just reminds me of that Simpsons, up and at them. All we have here is a grid that we're just chucking some displacement on. Pretty cool. low res, I guess. And then I'm throwing into a copy to points to copy on all those different intersections where there's points. And we can always see that by coming here and seeing where the points might be. Then I'm using our old sweep node here with some round tubes to give us our netting. And then merging those together and we get our atom array. It's a little bit more manual in Cinema, but you also have a bit more control about what you want on each of those different parts. Next up we have Remesh. Now I've just got Flippy here and chucking him into a Remesh node. This gives us a whole heap of tries that lowers its quality. Now we can pick our target size and up its quality even if we want, or add some smoothing. Different iterations is kind of like just blurring how it remeshes essentially. But this is a real useful one when you just want to remesh, especially for something like a cloth sim maybe. We also have adaptive, so it'll only give you density where it needs density. All these can be helpful. And then we have another version of this, which is PolyReduce, which does kind of what you think. And it's not too dissimilar to Remesh, but it's more about just polygon reduction for like maybe level of detail or something like that. And here I've got it just keeping 25%. So if I go 50, it's going to be more detailed. If I go 100, this is going to be no change. So let's bring it back down to 25 because I then want to show you the next one, which is Quad Remesh, which is kind of similar to the ZRemesher in Cinema. And this just gives us some nice topology back on our Flippy because we reduced him and then we quad remeshed him. Now it's not identical to how it was before. So there is some like interpolation or artistic interpolation, I guess, that goes on this, but it's a super helpful one, especially to get nice topology. And this has been massively improved in Houdini 21. And we have a few different controls like symmetry, so both sides will match, especially if we have something that is symmetrical. And we have adaptivity and different edge flow controls, which you can mess around with. Next is Metaball. Not one I use very often, but I guess when it's needed, it's helpful. But we have just two spheres here that we can control, and they're called Metaball spheres because they do this very specific job of becoming blobs. And we have different blend models here and how much weight it has in the grand scheme of things. Maybe it doesn't have any weight. Maybe it has 2. Maybe it has like 20, which just makes it fatter. There we go. There's Metaball. Now the final one here is Vectorizer, and in Houdini it's called Trace. So what I've got here, just to show you what's going to happen, is I have this clonal icon, and I've just got this printed on a grid. But then if we use the Trace node, and we can mess with the threshold and different things here just to get different levels of what it's going to pull out. I've got the clonal icon just as a PNG. And we have some different filters as well, like remove borders, resample shapes, which can be helpful. And then I'm just going to chuck that into a carve just to get our lines. And then we have a vectorized logo that has converted an image into curves.
All right, that's generators. Now stay tuned for the next video, which will be tags.